I got these Lane cedar chest side tables for $30. I even found a massive bullet in one of them. They were covered in baby blue paint with another layer of dark blue on one and red on the other. I stripped off the old paint, which came off pretty easily. I then used a carbide scraper to get off any of the remaining gunk, and after that, I sanded every inch with 120 grit. There were a few dark spots and stains, so I mixed wood bleach with hot water and scrubbed with steel wool to remove them. For repairs, I used quick wood epoxy putty. Once it was dry, I sanded it down smooth. I decided to use a gel stain since I've always had trouble in the past when staining white oak. I then color matched my repairs with my new favorite product, Mohawk Blend-All Sticks. Pricey, but worth it. I then sealed my repairs with a vinyl sealer and satin lacquer. Here's the before and here's the after. These side tables were definitely challenging, but I'm really happy with how they turned out. Did you know the serial number on Lane Furniture is the date of manufacturing, but backwards? Meaning this pair was manufactured on May 28, 1959. How cool is that? Do you remember when I found prison letters in a $3,000 mainline hooker desk? Well, I forgot to tell you, I also picked up the matching triple dresser and nightstand from the same estate sale. Cha-ching. These bad boys are going to be worth a lot once they're cleaned up, so let's get started. I sanded everything down with 120 grit. The nightstand was in bad condition, so that needed a little extra love. I used oxalic acid from Real Milk Paint Company. I eyeballed a 1:8 ratio of wood bleach to water and applied it with an old paintbrush. And while that dried, I rescued the floppy veneer with some wood glue and filled in the chip veneer with epoxy putty. Then came the fun part. I took Real Milk Paint Company hemp oil and slathered it on with my hands. This is always so satisfying and therapeutic for me. It brought out all the highlights in the wood grain and made it look so pretty. I sprayed the hardware with some gold spray paint and added some soft clear wax to the drawer slides so that they would glide better. Here's the before and here's the after. I am dying over the contrasting base and body of this dresser. It's like definition of mid-century modern. The wood grain is just delicious. And before you ask, I didn't find any letters in these pieces. I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace when I saw something in the background of the canoe listing photo. It looked to me like a mid-century modern Drexel buffet, so naturally I messaged the seller and he agreed to sell it to me for $50. Was it worth $50? I'm not sure because it was in horrendous condition. My first step was sanding off the old stain and finish with 120 grit sandpaper. I fixed the floppy veneer with some wood glue and painter's tape. Then it was the time to address the giant chunks missing from this piece. I used so much epoxy putty to rebuild the edge inside of this buffet along with all the chips, and once it cured, I sanded it all down smooth. I used Mohawk medium brown walnut wiping stain as a nod to the original color. Then I was faced with the task of blending in all the repairs, which took me forever. Like, I really put these blend-all sticks to work. And yes, I probably should have just replaced the veneer, but you live and you learn. So to seal, I used several coats of a semi-gloss lacquer and the transformation was finally complete. Now here's the before and here's the after. I'm very happy with how it turned out and I truly love the design. I drove almost 700 miles to pick up this gorgeous piece of history, and you'll understand why once you see what it does. It's a 1960s Saba stereo from Germany, and yes, that is teak. I started off by giving it a good clean so I could better see what I was working with. It was in pretty good shape, so I decided to only refinish the top. The old varnish came off so easily with 120 grit. There was also a chunk missing from the built-in drawer pull, so I used epoxy putty to fill in the damage. Once it cured, I hand sanded it to shape with a very fine grit sanding pad. Next, I had to find out how to color match it, which was incredibly hard to do and I still didn't get it exact. I did apply the lacquer to the areas I didn't refinish and it basically erased any scratches or marks that were present. It was like magic. I applied several coats to seal the bare teak top and wow, just look at this before and after. It looks like I applied a new sheet of veneer. I'm so happy with how it turned out and now I don't feel so bad for the lengths and the price I paid to get this piece. And did I mention it also works perfectly? I can officially say that I have been catfished and buy a piece of furniture. I brought this thing home for $60 and it was the first time I had ever seen an old radio console with drawers like this. The metal slides had me puzzled. I figured it was just a unique piece, so I continued as normal by giving it a good clean and removing the hardware. For this flip, I ended up using Hart's Random Orbital Sander. I wish I had tried a battery-operated sander sooner because I'm not sure I'll ever go back to a corded sander. It was amazing and there was one less cord to trip over. I also used my Hart multi-tool with the sander attachment to get into all the hard-to-reach places. And for a stain, I applied one coat of this raw umber glaze and wiped off any excess. I was so confused because the stain took so much nicer on the top versus the drawers, and that's when it all clicked. This piece used to have a TV in it, like this one right here. So someone must have taken out the TV and installed these DIY plywood beadboard drawers. Kind of genius. Once I applied a few coats of wipe on poly, the transformation was complete. Now here's the before and here's the after. I personally love the contrast. If I had to do it over, I'd probably put some walnut veneer on the drawers to have it exactly match the top, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. Now I just need to figure out how to get the stereo to work work, but that's a problem for another day. Some may see a desk, but I see dollar signs. I immediately recognized the solid maple Crawford desk, and I bought it for $60. I started by cleaning the piece to get a better idea of what I was working with. I used 120 grit to remove any of the old finish, which thankfully came off pretty easily, but sanding did not help remove the dark stain on the top of the desk at all. I did try a few rounds of oxalic acid, which didn't work, neither did a hot iron, so I decided to just go ahead and apply some oil-based preconditioner and then a coat of fruitwood gel stain. I was honestly really stumped about the dark stains, and I knew my typical wax crayons wouldn't cut it, so I went back to the basics, color theory. I usually use an orange-red pigment under my concealer to hide dark marks, so I figured if that color correction works on my skin, it should work on wood too, right? Girl math. I got to the closest color match that I could, and then I added some graining details. I sealed it all up with a few coats of some semi-gloss lacquer. Now, here's the before and here's the after. While it's not perfect, it was definitely a learning experience. I guess it's time to practice my inline painting skills, so if you have any advice, please let me know in the comments. My thrift store illegally sold me this chest for $80. Lane cedar chests have been recalled twice for having over 14 fatal accidents due to the auto-locking latch. So my first step with this piece was to remove the lock. Then it was time to give it a good clean. Overall, the piece was in decent condition, so I decided to only refinish the top, sanding it with 120 grit. There were some chips to the veneer, so I used pre-colored epoxy putty to fill them in. Once they were dry, I sanded them down to be flush with the veneer. To seal the top, I applied 3 coats of wipe-on oil-based polyurethane, and I also applied a light layer to the rest of the piece just to revive it. My last step was to camouflage some of the blemishes with my veneer paint kit, and the transformation was complete. Now here's the before and here's the after. You're probably thinking, well, that looks the same, and yes, that's the point. My goal is to honor the original piece and fix it up so it can be loved for another 60 plus years. And if you didn't know, the serial number is the date of manufacturing backwards, meaning this piece was made on December 19th, 1961.
Welcome back. I'm glad to see you today. It's a fantastic day here, and I hope it is wherever you're at. Let's do just a beautiful little colorful painting today, one that it should make you happy. Let's get started. Today, I'm going to start out, use the 1-inch brush, with a little bit of just plain old titanium white, just a little spotted color, just a little touch of color. Shake it off, just beat the devil out of it.